Welcome to Blake Street Banter, where one of us knows what the word banter means. The other three are just along for the ride. I need everybody to do a real quick round of applause for our boy James. He showed up on time right now. It's a miracle, really. We were waiting. He wasn't too late, but he was here on time. He was here before Patrick, so I mean that's a win. And James is just never on time. So as you are listening right now, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, just stop literally for 2 seconds, clap, and just say that's to James, and just send out that good vibes, that good aura out there. James, how are you? You good, big dog?
Yeah, I'm living the dream. Thank you.
Yeah, just in your Cubs shirt on the couch on time. It is your best day, right? Like you just had a conversation with somebody really cool, right? Give it a little teaser. You and Noah just had a fun little banter session.
Yeah, we had a banter session with Brad Hopp. He had some really interesting perspective on what the clubhouse needs to do to be a consistent winner. So keep an eye out for that for sure.
Yeah, that's going to drop on the YouTube at 10:30 tonight. So in literally 50 minutes from now, the Brad Hopp is going to be on there, and then I don't know what I'm going to do with the podcast part of it, but it's gonna get out there anyway. Noah, what's up, big dog?
Hey, we've got a squad. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, we're doing something a little bit different. I just gave the rundown to you and Patrick, and we're gonna do a round table type of thing. I'm gonna pose the question, gonna hand it off to somebody, and you three are just gonna be kind of the talking heads, and we're gonna talk Rocks because it's on fire right now, Patrick. The Rockies world is on fire. There's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and there's not really any of this right now. And I know you have some takes, some thoughts, and we were kind of chit-chatting off air about it. So just the Rockies world, man, it's a little on fire. Like prepare us for what we're about to get into.
I think that's a great point to make about the fan base right now, where there doesn't seem to be an in the middle, as you put it. Either there wasn't enough activity done, and there's reasons that go behind that, or rather there wasn't trust, that the fact that there wasn't a ton done, and who's to blame and who's at fault. And do you trust that it just was a matter of it not coming together? And on the other side, it was, hold on, there's three prospects here, and there was a change at last year's deadline, and there is Dollander, and there is Charlie Condon. There's a change afoot. So you're right, there is no in the middle, and maybe today we'll try to bridge that gap just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Let's try to bring it together. It's hard. It is very hard. But there is a lot to be excited about, a lot to be upset about, a lot to be really just on fire about. Like James texted me, he's like, "What are we doing?" He didn't actually say that, but he was a little fired up. So I mean, the first question, I mean, it's the hottest topic right now, is how do we feel as, I guess, a fan base? Because we kind of all cover the Rockies in a certain way, but I kind of want to think about like the fan base perspective when I ask this question. How do we feel about how the trade deadline went for where the Rockies are right now? So where they are, where we kind of want them to go, what we kind of expected, all of that encompassing. Now I'm going to set you up for this and then sound off, Kings. How are we feeling, like literally as a fan base, as we take this in 48 hours later, really?
Yeah, I mean, well, shoot, I always say I'm a fan first. And so I kind of resonated with a lot of the fan base when the first couple days before the deadline passed. And I was like, all right, we're getting a head start. Already have 2 trades out of the way before the big day. And then on the big day, there was nothing. And I really was let down. And in our group chat, our group text, a lot of you guys were keeping me calm because, you know, I wanted to see Diaz go, not because he's a bad person, but I want to capitalize our assets now for the assets in the future. But I as we've learned, and Thomas Harding's MLB.com article did a great job of explaining it and shedding light on it, there just wasn't a market for a catcher with 2 calf strains in the past month. And, you know, Stallings, a career backup catcher, he's having a great year, but he's playing at Coors Field. So the market just wasn't there. And the saying, like, one man's trash is another man's treasure, well, it's not magical. Like, that doesn't just happen. And so I understand the fans' frustration with, you know, maybe we didn't do enough. But when you think about it in retrospect, compared to years past, and I know the league is saying, like, we just sat on our hands this year, they made 2 moves, and I really, really, really like the return from the Jalen Beeks trade, getting that southpaw the youngster that strikes out like 2 batters per inning. Excited for him, but yeah, that's where I stand on it.
Get him, James. Why is he wrong?
Well, I don't think he's all that wrong.
This is
Because, I mean, the way I approach it is that fans, and myself included, we're super reactionary. And while we didn't do as much as we wanted to do, or fans were hoping that we would do, it's not all lost. If I had to give a grade, I'd give it a C minus. We did get some fringe top 30 prospects, so it's not all is lost, and I'm not ready to set the world on fire for that. But I think a lot of reaction that we see in the fan space is none of this is being looked at objectively. Fans are carrying over past traumas from so many trade deadlines that we've done nothing or didn't move somebody that we clearly needed to move. A guy like Trevor Story comes to mind. Yes, we got some good draft picks out of that, but we'll see how it pans out if that was the right move or not. But like, fans are carrying over trauma from many years. I mean, not a lot of people are just jumping in on the Rockies on a losing season and becoming bandwagon fans. That doesn't happen. Most of us have been fans for a very long time, and you're going into it already frustrated. So this is just another way to channel it. And be upset about something, but I'm not ready to set the world on fire.
So what is that past drama? Like, so you're mentioning the past drama. When you think of as a fan, like what is that moment that you're just like, this absolutely sucks? Is it the Trevor Story, John Gray offseason, which one could argue that actually worked out better for the Rockies? But what is this past drama that you're kind of referring to?
Well, it's not any one thing. It's a lot of little things. So I'll give you a good example. So we've needed to offload pieces for many seasons as we haven't been contending very much. And in those seasons when we actually did have a chance, the team actually didn't do enough. You know, there's articles out there about how when we were a game back of the Dodgers with a chance to win the West, that the clubhouse players said that the front office didn't do enough to help us out. You know, so it's just a combination of many years of just not doing what needs to be done from a front office perspective. That's my take anyway.
Yeah, incredibly well put, James. I think, you know, they're the two perspectives, I think, in a lot of ways, as you guys are saying. If you're a fan, there's some hope, there's hype, there's also the disillusionment, right? It's like love and hate. They're the two sides of the same coin, right? It's passion. The true opposition of love is indifference, right? And the media is looking at it from a standpoint of like, well, what does it mean? Like, let's just report on the facts, and we'll give you a little bit about what it means, but a lot of it is speculation. But here are the facts of it. So I think with Diaz, and again, the way you put it, James, was great. On one hand, you say, well, Diaz was banged up, so there's really not as much interest in a player like him at this year's trade deadline. True. Like, again, we don't know what offers were out there. We don't know if it would have not literally a bag of balls, but just hey, you know what? This guy's not even going to fit in our top 30. But at the same time, would that have been a positive deal? You probably would have felt like you lost the trade, but you do free up a spot on the 40-man roster. You do free up a spot on the 26-man roster for a Drew Romo. So regardless, he was injured, and you say, you know what, that really hurt his market. But then on the other side, you do look and say that, you know, early in last year's trade deadline, you had one of the best catchers in the game. Could hit for power, hit for average, great at handling a pitching staff. Turned out to be the All-Star Game MVP to help the National League defeat the American League for the first time since 2012. Yeah, so you have a lot of these things, and he still has another year left of club control. And here we are looking back and saying they got nothing for him. So there's two ways to kind of look at this, and multiple ways to kind of skin a cat. And again, going back to James' point, it's a lot of compare and contrast of different things and some trauma for the fan base. You look at what the Rockies did these last two trade deadlines, and you say, well, that's an improvement. I feel good about that. You look at what the Rockies did at this year's trade deadline in acquiring 3 prospects, and they were last of the 9 teams that were sellers at the trade deadline. And so in that way, they were a failure because of the other teams that were rebuilding and trying to get better for their future, they got back the least. So there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. And I think depending maybe on the person that you talk to, that's the opinion that they're going to have, not biased, but it's very much based in their emotions and their investments in the team.
Yeah, and to go off of that, I kind of believe that the national baseball media and the average Rockies fan that doesn't dive into the minor league stuff in the way that we all do, the last big splash trade that the Rockies made was a deal that they lost and sent $50 million to the other team with Nolan Arenado. And so to James's point about past trauma, for a lot of people, until the Rockies make this huge splash trade that, as a seller, that's tough to do, but brings in a lot of hype, the past is going to, date people's mind with the Arenado trade.
Okay. I want to say something. I don't, how do I word that though? Like, that is the past trauma, right? Maybe that's what I was trying to get out of James, because James wasn't happy about the Nolan Arenado trade. Like, none of us were. Like, none of us sat here like, you know what? That is a fantastic trade, especially with all the little pieces that we got back, right? But why does it need to be a big splash trade to regain the confidence of a fan base from a front office that is different than what it was that made that trade? That front office is what burned that, the old front office burned that bridge with Nolan, ruined that relationship. And then you kind of see the new front office bridging that relationship. Hey, Rymack, you don't want to go? We got you. We extended you. You're not going anywhere unless you want to. Charlie, you can stick around. We could use you in the outfield as an veteran presence coming around. Like, they're building that trust in the clubhouse, which I would imagine would lead into trust to players that are wanting or able to come back here, i.e. a Cal Quantrill type thing. Like, what does it really need to be a giant splash to regain the trust of the fan base, James? Or can we just get over it and be big adults about it?
I don't know. It's winning fixes everything. So until we actually put a winner together, there's going to be this deep underlying frustration. And again, fans are super reactionary. So as soon as we start winning, like, bygones are bygones for sure. I think a lot of frustration comes from the fact that the Rockies have had several years now to fully lean into the rebuild. And as Patrick pointed out, we're the last of 9 sellers at the market to get the most out of what we needed to do. So it seems like we still are not fully leaning into a rebuild when we need to be doing that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think some of it is for fans. Do you really believe that they are headed in the right direction? Are they in a better direction? Sure, but is there truly a plan in place? Is that plan as good as other teams that are also rebuilding? The Rockies are obviously at a major disadvantage being in the division that they're in with the Dodgers, but they're 3 wild cards now. So I think that is really kind of an excuse that needs to go by the wayside. I think, not having everyone in NL West in going on, this will be the 32nd season for that to have happened. And they still kind of haven't figured out altitude. Is that something that they want to figure out? Are they really taking those steps forward? And so, how do you get past that trauma? And is it fair to hold on to it? Because again, if a lot of people, their relationship with sports teams is like relationships with people, where it can be maybe very volatile or it can be very unhealthy. And if you are still going through trauma and a lot of the pieces are still there, you're saying, hey, nothing has really changed. So sure, you can put a wall up and say, hey, everything that happened before Bill Schmidt was in charge. Well, was it before he took over as the interim GM, or was it when he was the full-time? Do with that what you will, for what you need to do for your own way of separating things. But the old GM, new GM, still Dick Monfort is the owner that's in charge, and he is still the one that does pull a lot of those strings. And that is the thing that, regardless of a couple good drafts here and there, a couple good moves at the trade deadline, that is still a consistent. And I think that's where a lot of fans look and say, nothing has really changed here. Maybe a little bit, but not enough.
Yeah, well, and I think that when you look at the National League standings this year, it's super frustrating to me because every single team at that deadline, other than the Marlins and the Rockies, were within 6.5 games, which is like, and every year in recent times, if the Rockies were within 6.5 games, they'd buy. And by buy, I mean go out and get, a reliever. They wouldn't go all the way in like the Padres. And I'm glad they don't do that. Um, but I think that, like you said, with the third wild card spot, the front office sees that the rest of the National League is right there. And I mean, I don't think the Cubs are a postseason team yet. They went out and bought. Like, I think the front office sees that maybe you definitely don't have to win 90 games anymore to make the postseason.
But is that the goal? Is playoffs the goal? Like, is the goal, like, do fans need an NL West title to buy in? Do the fans need an NL West third place finish to get back in? Is it just, hey, I can make the third wild card? Because we all remember 2018. That was dope. Like, is that the bar that we have set as Rockies fans? Like, that bar is completely different than the Los Angeles Dodgers. Like, it's World Series a bust for the Dodgers, and what they go through every October. I don't know if that's as much fun as it kind of lends out to be, but that could be a different conversation. And like, there's all these ways, but like, what is it? What is the bar that sets Rockies fans, like the casual Rockies fans? Like, we all know, I think we all sit here and we know too much about the farm, so to speak, as if you talk to your mom, who's probably needs to be listening to this pod right now. So go ahead and send it to her real quick. Links in the chat there. Like, is what's going to make your mom happy with the Rockies? Maybe that's the question, James. What is going to make your mama happy with the Rockies to be a contender to get over this? Oh, we traded Nolan and $50 million.
You have to be competitive. I mean, 500 baseball is kind of the bar. And I mean, when I look at it, it's like, are we playing 500 baseball? So are we at least giving ourselves a chance to be competitive and put ourselves in a good situation? When it's July and you're 25 games back, that's nobody's. I mean, at this point, Denver sports fans, nobody's paying attention to the Rockies right now. They're talking about Broncos preseason, and that's just a losing position for the Rockies. So just 500 baseball, I mean, that's really not a high bar to ask. But that's my read on it.
Okay, so bringing that back to the trade deadline, what could have happened at the trade deadline this year to set the bar to get that 500 mark for 2025? Because like, fans always want that. Obviously, this is a lost season. We're not idiots. We know this is going to be rough. But 2025, next year, that's the 500 goal for Mr. Dick Monfort and the rest of the fans. Like, 500 is the goal for next year. What would have made that move, like the casual your mama happy, Patrick? Like, what would have made your mama happy about getting to 500 for 2025?
Oh, well, if you want me to answer that, I'm going to have to spill some names that whenever a certain player comes into the game, my mom's going, not this guy. I'm not going to tell you who that is. Maybe off air. But, I wrote about this a little bit for Just Baseball, this idea that, they did not move CJ Cron in 2022, their lone all-star. And I shouldn't even say they didn't move Cron, because he was in conversations, but because he had gotten hit on the hand in Arizona just before the All-Star game and the All-Star break, his power was sapped and teams immediately saw that. And so they weren't really offering very much for a first baseman with decreasing and diminishing power. So that was, they learned from that, I think, to a degree, because then you saw the next year in 2023, immediately Mike Moustakas is quite literally the first guy that's traded at the deadline at the end of June, right? They get blown out 25-3, whatever it was. That night, they go and move Mike Moustakas up to 1. Oh, sorry. I remember a little more fondly for the Rockies to 1. But they go and move Moustakas, and, they catch the Angels maybe a little off guard and feeling better about themselves than they certainly should have. And that kind of aggressive behavior of saying, like, what is this going to communicate to the fan base? I think that is something that the front office cares about far too much, is what is the message that we are sending to fans? one of the messages that they love sending each and every year is, you know who a couple of these players are each and every year. You feel good about Charlie Blackmon being in right field, even if he is 37 years old. That's a familiarity to you. Oh, now Ryan McMahon is over at third base. There's a familiarity there about that. Oh, Kyle Freeland's still around, Herman Marquez. These are all things that I think they're trying to sell. And when you make a trade rather aggressively in June still, that's kind of waving a white flag. And I think they might be a little too concerned about how that looks. That being said, that was a great move. Connor Van Scoyac has done a nice job with the Rockies and their farm system in general. You know, they did a good job of at least warming up the fan base to this idea that, yeah, they are going to make trades. And yeah, there are still people that were critical of those trades, looking at it just from the very distant standpoint of, oh, we're giving up players and we're quitting on the season, when, again, the real fans know the season is over. This is a lost year. So you might as well get something for your future. And knowing that this also was going to be a lost season, there should have been maybe a little bit more aggressive tendencies to try to offload those guys once they started pitching really well. I mean, after that big month that Gomber had, sell while the stock is high. Now, again, you have him for next year, and you have Quantrill for next year, and you have Rogers for next year. And going back to the comments that Noah made about the article that Thomas Harding wrote, you know, Bill Schmidt said, hey, you know, we're hoping to maybe have all those guys have a good year, be better, and be relevant in 2025. But that requires winning 20 to 25 more games than they are going to this year, maybe even 30 games. Is that just everybody playing a little bit better, or are they making a ton of moves during the offseason as well? And you're investing that much in a roster that has lost 100 games in back-to-back years. Again, these are some of the things that a lot of fans are asking themselves, and they don't have answers because the plan does not seem to be going that way.
Yeah. I mean, when you put it like that, everyone's got to chip in a little more to get 30 more wins. You're right. But if we were still talking about, Aaron, what you posed, like what's the bar? I think if the bar isn't the postseason, and I know our owner went out and said, I think we can play 500 ball a couple years ago, and that went viral. That's not the bar. If you're a Rockies fan, you're in it for October. And I'm very comfortable and confident in saying that, because otherwise, what are you tuning in for? Looking at the beautiful ballpark on TV? I don't know. I wouldn't understand it.
The Rockies suffer from a self-awareness problem. You look at Monfort's comments about being competitive when it was very clear that on paper we were not going to be, and we end up losing 100 games. Patrick's great point about the fact that we're not communicating a coherent message about where this club is headed in the short and far term. And then the lack of actually leaning into a rebuild when that's clearly what they need to be doing for the last several years now. There is no self-awareness in my opinion.
And that I think that is the biggest thing for Rockies fans. Like, there's no self-awareness from the above ownership in particular. Like Patrick said, like, we need to have a name on the roster. And I was playing old man softball, dominating, by the way, just absolutely crushing it. And wearing a Rockies hat naturally. And this girl goes, "Oh, what makes you a Rockies fan?" I've been a fan ever since I was born. She's like, "Oh, usually people just like the Colorado Rockies because Chris Bryant went over there." I'm like, okay, so we're done with this conversation. But I said that inside my head for James. Don't yell at me. But like there is that perspective. Like the casual, it's like, all right, that name went there, and we can all see why KB is here. Like that was a big reason why he was here. He was a name. He was somebody they looked at into all the nepotism and all the insider stuff that goes along with it. But I think you guys all kind of hammered that nail on the head with its perspective, perception, and it matters and all that. But like, if that really mattered to the people making the decisions, wouldn't we have tried to make any trade whatsoever? Like, there is no market for Diaz and Solis. There is no real market for Brendan Rodgers. Cal, you can make an argument that there is a market, but not really. So if like that perception from Mr. Dick Monfort is we need to bring in people and make the fans feel like we're making trades to make good trades and bringing in, wouldn't he be pulling that string on Mr. Billy Noah? Like, hey, Billy, I need you to move Cal for whatever you can bring it in, because I need somebody in here next year that's going to move that needle. Like,
Well,
go ahead.
I think that's where the reason they didn't do that is where their vision comes in, where they believe if they have 8 MLB starters who can win at that level, then the offense can do just enough. And if they go sign a closer, everyone in the bullpen, and we've talked about it in the Twitter space the other day, everyone in the bullpen can go back to their natural roles and innings, which is huge for handling pressure. Tyler Kinley, high leverage guy, doesn't like pitching when there's no leverage, and the stats show that. But then on the flip side, the Rockies traded 2 guys that really, really struggled in high leverage situations. Beeks, 7.06 ERA in save situations. Outside of those, 2.93 ERA. And, I think that points to it's real. Guys are more comfortable in their spots in that bullpen. And I think Patrick could do a better job of explaining what the vision could be. But that's, to answer your question, that's why I think they didn't go full bombshell mode on everyone.
Yeah, I don't, maybe there's something was lost in translation, but I think Dick Monfort is not as interested in making trades, because then you lose that familiarity. If you believe that the ownership, that their modus operandi is to win a World Series, then you're, I don't know. I don't know if you, how many fans actually do believe that that's necessarily the goal. I think it's supposed to be, and I think the front office says a lot of the right things, and they would like to win, and they are certainly competitive. But Colorado Rockies baseball as a business is great, and winning at that, I think, also has a lot of value to a lot of different people, particularly the owner.
James, you could probably harp on that even
I know.
more.
I want him to go off. Like,
Yeah.
he's over there smirking on his couch. It's super comfortable couch.
What's
like,
up, Smirker? What are you
yeah,
smirking
smirk.
about?
What are you smirking about?
Yeah, what the smirk you doing, dude?
Well, it's just really funny because it's painfully obvious that the business side has dominated the on the field product side when it comes to decision making for quite a long time, and I think people are very very keen to see that. And you mentioned that the front office says a lot of the right things, and that could be true, but fans, they can tell when people are being authentic and when they're not. And I think a lot of times they view that as inauthentic. As I mentioned, the self-awareness problem too. And then again, the past traumas, like it's just people really, it's really hard to believe that the Rockies do have a World Series title as their main and only goal. And it's not. And I understand from an owner's perspective that the business side does matter. It certainly does, but it seems like that definitely dominates most of the decision making. And people see that. And for some reason, sometimes I feel like they think that they don't, or they laugh it off, or they view those concerns as invalid. And frankly, it is valid, and they need to recognize that. Just real quick about the trade deadline again, like we moved some pieces, which is really great. And seeing all this reaction to it is interesting, because how can we really grade what they've done? Yes, we made some moves, but we're not going to know how this pans out for several years, right? And ultimately, maybe this trade deadline is going to look fantastic for the front office, right? That absolutely could be a reality in 2-3 years from now, when we are threatening for a wild card or maybe even a division, should I say that? But those are just my immediate thoughts.
Yeah, maybe the not the elephant in the room, but the thing that is I think part of the equation for giving the Rockies a grade is the players that they, not just that they didn't trade, right? Because I think word choice is important, because you can't necessarily say that the Rockies didn't trade Diaz. It's just they didn't come to an agreement on a Diaz deal. And a lot of that has to do with, the other side, right? But when you pull a player completely off of the trade market, when their trade value has never been higher, and you are again hurtling towards another 100-loss season, that's part of the equation of due diligence at the trade deadline and improving your team for the future. Now, Ryan McMahon's a great player, great guy to have in the clubhouse. He's done an amazing job as a leader, and I for one would be saddened, were he to get traded. But for the business of baseball, you can look and say, well, he's going to be around for 3 more years, maybe 2025, maybe is when they get back to some sense of relevance, and they're, maybe they can get into the mid 70s, and then 2026 they can maybe make a run. 2027, a lot of ifs. And that's, again, the window of contention, the window of opportunity window means time. And I could go off on a rant here about what that really means, but I'm not. Bottom line is, if you don't believe that this Ryan McMahon can impact the next, roster of Rockies going to the postseason, then there's no reason to keep him around. And you could say the exact same thing for everybody that's been on the roster in 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. Those teams were not built to win. And those were lost years, and those were all lost assets that could be helping the future. And I think that has to do a lot with a lot of people giving the Rockies a very bad grade at this year's trade deadline, because it's what they could have done that they didn't. That's a part of this whole equation.
I felt that. That was
Yeah.
the gut coming out on that one. That was, you've been holding that one in. And I agree. And that's that past trauma I think James was talking about. Like, we've been burned so many times when our window was hot and we didn't do it and we did our man wrong. And then here we are, and then blah, blah, blah. So I like that. That was passionate. But before we get into the next thing, James, your favorite game. We got Patrick Lyons.
Patrick's
here.
going to blow us out of the water.
I know. This is a BSB versus Patrick Lyons.
Is this a
thing
trivia
here.
game?
It is a trivia game. So I'm going to give random facts about one Rockies player. You have exactly 1 minute to guess who it is. And for you all that are playing at home, YouTube, Twitter, whatever, go ahead and put your guesses in it as we go. I'm not as prepared as I used to be with the other ones with this, but I think I can fake it till I make it. That's just my entire life's motto there. So
you're on someone's baseball reference page. Okay, got it.
Yep. Hopefully you can't see in my glasses here. So, so you have 1 minute. I'm going to give a fact. I'm going to wait like a second or two. You either put a guess out or don't, and then I give the next fact.
James, you need to carry for us. Blake should be answering.
James is 2-0. James is 2-0 in this because
Whoa.
he hasn't been showing up the last 2-3 pods. So he hasn't had a lot of chances, but
It was just one.
it feels like 8. But we are here. Gerardo Para. Wrong. That's not it. So you have one guess out of the way. Your minute starts. Let me get my life together. Now, this player was drafted in the first round in 1990 by the New York Mets.
Bobby Jones.
Nope. He was drafted by the Milwaukee Brewers in the 24th round in 1987 before that. He attended Oklahoma State. He played for 7 different MLB teams across 14 years.
Not Todd Zeal, no.
He only played for Colorado for 1 year.
Jeez.
Yep. Played for Milwaukee 6. The LA
Burnett.
Dodgers. Boom. Ding, 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 ding.
Oh.
We got a winner. 20 seconds left on it.
Wow.
Jeremy Burnett.
Jerome.
The O. He played 150 games for the Colorado Rockies in 2004.
32 homers?
37 home runs, 110 RBIs, an OPS of 916. I also believe that he is one of the top 5 Rockies in OPS in the month of July. That is the only reason I knew this man played for the Rockies. So that was why I picked him. Right after that, in his age 35 season, he went on to the Chicago Cubs for his 36th age and 37th in Pirates for the Pirates. And he played 111 games in his very final year. And he had a OPS plus of 81. For the Rockies, had an OPS plus of 121.
So I met Jeremy Burnett when he was still a prospect. Actually, he had just gotten called up with the Mets, I think. This is like circa 92. My uncle had partial season tickets to the Mets. So we went to the Winter Caravan, and we go. It's John Franco there, Jeremy Burnett. I might have it somewhere. He signed our little ticket. We walk around Shea Stadium. It was cool. There was snow on the ground, so we didn't get to go on the field. It's fine. We get up to the press box. My uncle goes, "Hey, Patrick, ask him about how they put the apple up in center field." So I raise my hand. I ask the question. The guy goes, "Hey, kid, come here." So I go down to the front row. He said, "Push that button." In the middle of the darkness on a Saturday night in December with snow on the ground in Flushing, Queens, New York, I push the button and up comes the red apple. Lighten up, says home run. And then it goes back down and we're back to pitch blackness. It was great. Jeremy Brunitz. That's my Brunitz story.
That's awesome. Jeremy Brunitz leads to Patrick Lyons hitting the apple button. That's a fun little connection there. And
Aaron, I have a request. The next
Oh,
time we
weird.
do trivia, the Rocky has to actually have played for the Rockies when I was alive. All right.
we can't go back 5 years. That's not a thing that we can do. We don't have time. Like, that's too easy for the people. Yeah. This is how about this? I'm pushing you to get to know your Rockies history a little
I
bit.
mean, I'm getting embarrassed. James shows up once a month and gets it right every time.
Do you know have you ever heard of what double unique? Have you ever heard of that term when it comes to players' names, double unique? So that means no player in the 23 plus thousand players has that player's first name or last name. And you go, well, there's a lot of players named Jeremy, but
No,
only
you
one
know.
named Jerome.
Yeah.
Spelling. So spelling is all about it. So Jerome Burnitz, he is a double unique. There's maybe 400. The number might be a little bit higher than that. I've got a spreadsheet out somewhere.
We
yeah.
know you have a spreadsheet. Yeah. So I don't know what, honestly, I would be terrible at this game as well. I don't remember anything ever about anybody. James has a pretty good memory. He's a history buff, so he's able to do that. Not a mind that I have to work with, but
That was impressive.
That was impressive. 20 seconds left. Like you're almost like have enough time left to have a whole nother trivia, like combined with your 3 dubs. So you can show up late, but we might just, that's it. Every minute you show up late, we take off 5 seconds off the trivia timer.
Oh, there we go.
Whatever.
No, if you ever do
like,
this for Aaron, you instead of picking a Rockies player, you have to pick one of his kids. So just to give him a chance.
Yeah. There we
luck.
go.
Yeah.
I think you might get it. I think you might get it.
All right, so let's go to the last roundtable question. That first one kind of just kept going and it was fun, but what do we expect from the Colorado Rockies moving forward? So we just talked about ownership still going to be in place. We have a new front office regimen. You could argue that it's making different decisions to make a good baseball club, but there's still a puppeteer running it. There's still fan perspective is important. All of this stuff is going forward, and you have guys that are coming up. You have been told by Billy Schmidt, or not, Chris Forbes on the broadcast last night that we plan on pushing up prospects and we plan on put them in the MLB. First 3 names that pop up in mind with that is Jaden Hill, Seth Halverson, and Carson Palmquist. Our dog Carson Palmquist are all in AAA, all with the assumption that they're going to make a major league debut sometime soon. I think that 45-day mark is in the middle of August, like August 20th or something. So that's where we're at, right? All that is to build up to 2025 and beyond. So James, I just like to hear your voice because I never get to hear it because you're always late. Is what do we kind of want from the Colorado Rockies in 2025 going forward? Leave it at that.
What do we expect from them in 2025? That's the question.
Yes, that's what I asked.
Okay. In a very long-winded way. I gotcha. I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to think because, I mean, you don't know what's going to happen, right? So this is a lost year, obviously. The most exciting part is to watch the young guys come up and play. As you mentioned, the prospects that we're pushing through. Talking with Brad Hopp today, he had a lot to say about the minor league system and specifically how good it is right now. So I actually feel very good about the farm system and the players that are coming through it. So in a lost season like this, just really excited to see those guys get quality time. And then, of course, what's magical about baseball is when March rolls around, everybody thinks their team has a chance, right? So when 2025 happens and we can look back and see what happened at winter meetings or what didn't happen, and we can see what's on paper, I'm going to be extremely excited no matter what happens for when it rolls around again next March. I'll fully expect us to come out of the gates and be competitive. Rockies historically, when we are competitive, May and April are really good months for us. It's those middle of the summer months that are a lot harder. So, I expect hopefully we'll be having a conversation around the All-Star break next year, and we'll be talking about how do we make up a 5-6 game gap that we have because we are playing good baseball.
Yeah, real quick, I agree with everything you said, James. Patrick, I'm going to ask you a question because I was a bit surprised that they elevated Palmquist to AAA. I don't know if that was just me, but to be honest, I thought he was going to be one of those guys that would go AA to the bigs. And I wonder if you have any input on that or if you were surprised too.
No, I wasn't totally surprised, but I agree with what you're saying. Is I thought he was going right from AA up to the majors to make a couple starts, here and there. But I think with all of the deals that went down and we saw guys from Spokane getting promoted to AA, it was kind of a crunch of like, well, you know what, we can only protect this guy so much. We actually need to free up a spot in the rotation for the Yard Goats in AA. So, all right, let's have him put his big boy pants on and try that out up there in Albuquerque. That's kind of how I saw that move more than it was, maybe backing off of any kind of plan of skipping Albuquerque. Because I think we are going to start to see, a lot more guys make their debut directly from Hartford than, hey, you got to stop in New Mexico first. I think they've backed off of that plan just a little bit. This was more just about the crunch for needing more spots in the rotation for AA.
I gotcha. And then I guess my next question would be, we're told that a lot of guys are going to make their debut in the second half, and Bud's been candid about that too in his press conferences. Do you have any leading candidates that you would put in that at the front of the line for guys to get called up?
I mean, there's a lot. The list that I wrote down, I mean, there's 9 guys. And so now the only thing is you only have to create room for 2 of them, or excuse me, 3 of them. So there's some fat, I think, on the 40 man that you can free up spots for. That's what makes this rebuild or any rebuild difficult or challenging, at least for some, is that you have to give an opportunity for some of these young guys to grow and sometimes fail and then readjust. But if you've got veterans everywhere that's blocking them, how are they going to get that opportunity? So Yanquiel Fernandez, he's on the 40-man roster. Give him a taste of the majors. Zach Veen needs to be protected this winter so that he's not taken in the Rule 5 draft. So go ahead and just call him up early. Give him that opportunity. Same thing for Drew Romo. You might as well do the same thing for Jaden Hill because he needs to be protected this winter ahead of the Rule 5 draft. So right there, those are 3 guys that you want to see making their big league debuts and added to the 40-man. And then you've got guys that are already on the 40-man you want to see a lot more of. We still haven't seen Antoine Kelly in purple. We still haven't seen Bradley Blaylock. He's on the 40-man. He's already made his major league debut. Have we seen Juan Mejia yet? This has been a strange year, but he's on the 40-man. He hasn't gotten promoted yet. Angel Chavi, give him a little bit more opportunity. Give Adael Amador some more opportunity. So those are 9 names right there that they don't necessarily have to be playing every single day, but you've got to find a way to get them, on the active roster at some point in the next 2 months. It becomes a little bit of a challenge with a lot of the veterans that are currently on that 26 and 40-man roster.
Yeah. No, yeah. Thank you for that. Cause there's just so many guys, like you said, and that helps create a little bit of a clearer picture in my mind of some guys that I hope to see before, I go back to school in mid-August, because that'll stink, but you'll get to enjoy it the rest of the way. But yeah, I mean, kind of looping back to what James was saying, after opening day this year, there's no other team that's looking forward to opening day next year than the Rockies. And to your point too, with what they normally perform pretty well in April and May when they're good. May was a great month this year too. They were above 500. And then this past month in July, they went 11-15, I believe, give or take a game, but I tracked it last night. And so the hope is to catch lightning in a bottle with one of these prospects that makes their debut, because I mean I knew that Trevor Story's debut and like rookie stretch was insane, but it feels like, and please bring up a guy if you can think of one. Like it's been so long since the Rockies have had a guy get called up and then instantly make a prolonged impact. I mean, Hilliard and Dom Nunez both hit solo home runs in their or homers in their debut, but then struggled. And Nolan Jones came on last year and did great, but he struggled at the start. And that's where we kind of learned the whole, he starts slow. And James, like James says, he's got to shake that. But I don't know. I'm just trying to think of rookies that could do that.
Well, Hunter Goodman did that last year when he first got called up. Wasn't hitting a home run every other at bat like Michael Tolia this year. But then the league kind of figured him out just a little bit, and we still don't know what we have with Hunter Goodman. The Rockies still don't know. I think one of the lines that is frustrated from a lot of people that I've talked to in Rockies media is that these things will work themselves out, and they do, but it takes years sometimes for that to happen, and you lose that time, and you lose a lot. And I'll probably be saying this on the Rockies Insider podcast on Monday, which we'll talk about. So I'll just shamelessly plug myself here in just a moment, a new endeavor that I'm starting up with plenty of help here from the Boys on Blake Street banner and Just Baseball. But things working themselves out. I've thought of it like this, and James, I know you'll like this. If you took the greatest Rockies of all time and you put them on the same team, 2-3 years, just so you don't have a sample size of 1 year, because anything can happen. That team is undoubtedly the best team in baseball. And you don't even have to take their best seasons. Take an average of, again, the best players, their average years, they are going to be the best team in any individual year. That being said, why has there only been one World Series in 32 years? Why? And it took a historic run that no one really saw happening for a team that was on the outside looking into the playoffs, for that matter. Why have they only had 5 postseason appearances? Well, because all of those guys did not play on the same team at the same time. So going back to what I touched on earlier with window of contention, window is time. You have to have all those guys time out together. And if now is not your time, you have to accept that and try to make 2 years, 3 years, 4 years that time. That's partially what tanking was all about, right? This idea that, well, we don't have it right now, so why do we need to win 65 games? It's pointless. You could lose 45 and it's going to have the same general result on the fan base. But now in 3, 4 years, 5 years, and 6 years, because now we're going to have a core of guys together at the same time, it's going to increase the likelihood that we're going to make a postseason run in multiple seasons. Look at the Orioles. They did that because they tanked. I think I said it at the time when the Nationals in 2021, I think that was the year where they broke it down and they got rid of everybody and just were really bad. They're probably going to get back to the postseason before the Rockies because of their plan and that play. So again, that window of having that opportunity to have all those guys do it at the same time, the difficulty that they're going to have here in the next 2 months is there's just not enough playing time to give an opportunity to all those guys.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron's favorite sentence, let the kids play, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like that's where my frustration is. I know I'm on the very far end of, hey, there's hope, right? Because of so and so coming up, and let the kids should be playing. Like we see Hunter Goodman once a week now after whatever, like, and we still see Jake Cave in the outfield, and that's very frustrating, and that's where the blocking comes in. And I think my tune may change if the Rockies don't DFA a few guys in the next few weeks, like, because they need to be playing these guys for 2025. The same, like we had the same conversation last year, like what they need to know what they have now to see what's there for the future, right? And then we saw Monty playing a little bit more in August and September last year. Didn't really translate to success at the major league level this year, but at least we kind of saw what was going on. But like we need to be seeing these guys, I think, a lot sooner. And I don't know. And I guess to Patrick's point, so if you call up all of the studs of all time of all the Rockies, you might be winning, but like, sure, right? You better hope your franchise stars of all time would be able to win a championship for you if they were all on the same team at the same time, right? But like that very rarely happens. Like I look at the Phillies, like how much of their success is homegrown? Like Alec Boehm, maybe Brandon Marsh, like they went and got Harper, they went and got Schwarber, they went and got Castellanos, they went and got these big dogs. Like even maybe their pitching might be where they're at, and the Rockies are always at a disadvantage at that. So it's like, I guess my frustration is what I would like to see in 2025. Going back to the main question is like seeing what works. We kind of got that game plan from Cal this year. Like, all right, splitter, fastball. Let's see how this plays out. Worked really good, but now it's not so good. So how are we adjusting? But you also see the Rockies drafting diverse arm slots. You have these big right-handers coming over the top. You have these Sean Sullivan's, Carson Paulquist coming from the far left side, literally from first base. Like you have these diverse arms coming into play where it kind of feels like, all right, we're going to see what kind of works, because what has been working, the fastball sinker over the last few years, hasn't been doing what we thought it would. And because it worked there for a little bit, but then the league adjusted to us. But like they're finally changing that song and dance. I guess, I don't know, like long-winded, like as James likes to say, I am like, it's just, there's so many moving parts to a championship team. The Dodgers haven't even figured out how to win a World Series constantly, right? And they're the upper echelon of success. They win the NL West all the time. They have major rotation injuries every single year. Yet here they are still leading the NL West and are top dogs in the NL, right? But like, do you trust them to win a World Series? Like, what are they doing to win a World Series? You can go, just pick a team and you can find holes in their game plan going forward. Like, I don't know. What I want the Rockies to do is figure out what they have. And that starts with DFAing any of these guys that you weren't able to trade at the deadline, and give these guys that need to have a 40-man decision, Jaden Hill, Zach Veen, Drew Romo, Grant Levine, like all these guys are coming up. Like you need to decide on these guys, and they need to be in the major leagues to figure it out. Like I don't need, like, I love that Juan Mejia and Angel Chavi were added to the 40-man because they had great years last year. But Warming Bernabel, like you should have learned from your mistakes from Warming Bernabel, who fantastic in Spokane in 2022, didn't translate in 2023, is okay in 2024. Like, why do we keep doing that? Like, why aren't we doing some of these guys that are at the tail end of this Rule 5 career to figure out what we have in them? And I think that builds that success. But then you can just draw it back to the puppeteer that's in charge. Like, we need to have familiar faces. So if we add him to the 40-man now, everybody's going to know who Angel Chavi is when they call him up, and that face is with that name that we said 3 months ago. And now here we are. We got that. I think I'm done, James.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
You weren't at all.
I mean, I was. I'm following you. I understand. I just think it is really complex. Like, we can stand here and talk about, it's so simple. They just need to do this and do that, and it's difficult. It really is. But ultimately, you're right that they need to be put on the field. We need to see what combinations work. We need to see, who can put it together. And this year, I mean, it really is lost, and it's about getting guys experience, and it's about what hard lessons can they learn right now, so then when they come to camp next March, they're going to be in a better place to be successful. So, yes, let's get some guys some playing time earlier rather than later.
And this might be a weird question to ask this group because maybe you don't know the question, but when has that ever worked out? Like, we saw the Diamondbacks play the Kids last year and they had some success. They struggled mightily at the beginning of this year. Corbin Carroll's hitting 7th or 8th in the lineup for the Diamondbacks. I like to think I'm fairly knowledgeable about the baseball game now as it's being played right now. I'm not a historian, but like I can follow along with, all right, this toss prospect, like the Baltimore Orioles, I think, are like the only ones that have seen success of calling up the kids and doing their thing and just blowing all expectations out of the water. Of the other 29 teams, I don't know if that's really been it. And am I wrong? Like, can you guys think of anything, a time where it's like, all right, all these kids come up and let's see what happens?
Well, I just think that the Orioles doing what they did to tank so hard to set this up. I mean, it changed how MLB allowed teams to tank with the top 10 rule pick or whatever. You guys know it better than I, but you can't pick top 10 certain number of years in a row because of, I mean, they saw how dominant the Orioles were after they won 40 games for like 3 straight years, I think.
My pushback to that is, though, prospects are such a gamble. Like, me and James have this conversation constantly. You look at the first round picks of every single team of every single year, 50% of them are hits and 50% of them are duds. Like, that's not a Rocky thing. That's a baseball thing. And so, like, the fact that the Orioles lucked out on all that to happen at the right time in the right place, I draw that more to luck rather than talent and development and organization ran and this and that. Like, it's, I don't know where I'm going with this. And I think the Rockies are in a hard spot being in Coors because you're not bringing in free agents. You're not bringing in people that want to go. Maybe that's because of Coors and the environment, but maybe because that's the ownership and all that stuff that's going along with it.
That's it right there.
The ownership piece or the Coors Field piece?
You hit the nail on the head. There's just this idea that there are certain avenues of player acquisition that's closed off to them. That's why, GM Bill Schmidt frequently says, "Hey, we're a draft and develop team," and really that means we're left with that as almost our only resource to acquire really good and talented players because we can't get free agents. So the Orioles, I don't necessarily agree with the luck piece of the Orioles. Some of it, there are some years in which the draft is weaker than others. I mean, you almost can make the case a lot more so that the Nationals got lucky, right? Where they got two generational players in Steven Strasburg and Bryce Harper in back-to-back years. That's certainly that. But Gunnar Henderson wasn't, a first overall pick, right? A lot of these prospects that they're utilizing at the trade deadline, Connor Norby wasn't an early first round pick in the Trevor Rogers deal. So they're certainly is the right place in the right time, but they've put themselves in that place and they've put themselves at that time. That is the window of contention. Let's be bad for a few years. And any of our guys that are going to hit free agency during the period of time in which we are bad, why do we even keep them around? Let's just go ahead and get rid of them. And again, that's an extreme approach. And that hasn't worked for every team. That's the other piece. The White Sox did that, right? They got rid of Chris Sale and numerous other players, and it didn't work out.
Even the Cubs. I mean, they went 3 for 3 on getting rid of Baez, Schwarber, and Bryant, and they haven't really seen they haven't jumped over the hump since that.
Well, I wouldn't say that's tanking, but that is an example of them recharging their rebuild. Yeah. And I think that is certainly has helped. I wrote an article at the time ahead of the 2021 season because I think there's some people that didn't understand the idea of the importance of trading a Trevor Story was that, okay, let's kind of wait and see. And this certainly could be a whole other topic for another day. But if you look at all of the free agents that were, or rather the shortstops that were going into their free agent season in 2021, and how did their team handle it? You had Francisco Lindor of the Cleveland Guardians. You had Trey Turner of the Washington Nationals, Javi Baez of the Cubs, Dansby Swanson of Atlanta, Corey Seager of the Dodgers, and you had Trevor Story for the Rockies. And, I think some teams maybe handled it better than others. I don't even necessarily say that I'd put the Rockies at the bottom of that list, but you got to see how all of those teams dealt with that. If they weren't bringing their guy back, if they weren't going to be relevant, let's just go ahead and trade them and get some prospects for that guy. The Rockies ended up doing fairly well with Trevor Story with the compensation pick. Now, at the time, and again, this wasn't a lot wasn't made of this at the time. Again, this is part of the article over on Just Baseball for you to check out, is that the Rockies were going to get a compensation pick, but they were not guaranteed a compensation pick after the first round. Trevor Story would have first needed to reject the qualifying offer, which was a foregone conclusion, but it all was dependent on how much money he was going to make in free agency. And if this arm issue was as big as it was and was part of the reason why the package of prospects that teams were offering the Rockies, if that arm issue was such a big deal, he might sign a pillow contract and get paid less than $50 million, which would have meant the Rockies would have had a compensation pick after the second round in the 70s and not in the early 30s. That's something that's kind of got lost in the shuffle of all this. So it's just kind of interesting to see how different teams navigate different situations. And again, a lot of it goes back to what we talked about earlier in the show, is that of all the teams, the 9 clubs that said, hey, we're definitely out. We're not even going to acquire big league talent. We're going to trade prospects. The Rockies got the fewest prospects back for their big league talent.
Yeah.
But there was 0 top 100 prospects being traded. And like, I get, but like, what does adding a middle of the road starter get you as a depth piece at the farm? Like Dylan Spain for Sam Hilliard ended up being a wash because Sam Hilliard's back, but Dylan Spain got cut.
Those are also off-season trades, and those guys were not coming back. So I think they were trying to just offload those guys. Let's just get something for nothing. I mean,
right. But like, that's the kind of the idea though of the trade deadline, right? Like we all want to trade Diaz for something. Like we want to move him for something because he's going to walk at the end of the year. But like, you might be able to make an argument that trading for something doesn't work out and it might just be a waste of time. Like Diaz might be offering more value to Hunter Goodman behind the plate right now for these last 3 weeks that he's with the team than Dylan Spain 2.0. No offense to Dylan Spain. I'm sure he's a great guy, but like, I don't know. Like I feel like there's this idea, like we have to trade this guy for this because we have to have something for it. Perspective, having a body into it. But I don't know if that's necessarily true. I don't know if you just add a body that makes your whole collective that much better. Like it could bring it down. You are the average of the people around you.
Yeah.
And so if you keep adding to that circle, that average is going to be dropped down.
I feel like that's going to create more competition, especially because now the guy that's on your bench at High A Spokane is going to be really fighting for playing time. I think that's going to make everybody better. My only counter that I would say is that if you look at the inactivity of the 2021 trade deadline, even if you say, Trevor Story and John Gray, okay, there are different, there were overtures of re-signing John Gray, et cetera, et cetera. There are other guys that could have been traded, could have been moved at that year's deadline. Yes. And any of those guys, those middle of the rotation guys, player you're taking a flyer on, those guys could have helped you in 2023 so that you didn't need, 17 different starters. You might have been able to have found something. It's somewhat of a lottery ticket, but bottom line is in January 1st, or rather on opening day, right? Is that March 28th? I want to say next year. Elias Diaz, that asset is gone. But had you gotten another body, a body that's at least better than the guy you currently have in that spot, you got something for nothing. Sure, Elias Diaz might go off and win a World Series for someone else, and you're going to get dunked on for that, which happened in 2012 when they traded Marco Scutaro, and he immediately won a World Series with the San Francisco Giants. And all of a sudden, you know what? Maybe we don't really want to trade these guys because they're going to go off and have success. We're going to look bad. We're going to trade Troy Tulowitzki in 2015 because we're trying to, dump some payroll. But other than that, we essentially went from a seller's trade deadline for the Rockies of waving the white flag. We went from 2013 all the way up to 2023 with there being only one trade, and that's Michael Givens. So yeah. I think it's okay if you just got a lottery ticket because sometimes those things win.
Pushback. I think Diaz working with Anthony Molina on Hunter Goodman for an extra month or two might pay more dividends than a prospect that never makes it over AA.
There's value in that, no doubt. And I think that's what the Rockies think. You're right. Yeah.
And that's my pushback. Maybe that's me talking myself into that this trade deadline was as bad, but I think you can make an argument that just moving a body for a body makes everything better. like competition is good, but if the competition isn't good, are you really getting that much better? Like every time I play James in fantasy baseball, like he doesn't make me any better because he's already bringing that average down for me. But if I'm playing James in basketball, like I'm not helping him get any better. Like there's absolutely no reason James and I are playing 1-on-1. Like that's a waste of his time.
Well, he needs to designate you for assignment in his basketball league.
Exactly. Yeah. Get rid of me. But if you need a protege that just needs to have a talk, I got you. Like I can do that. I can coach that guy up. I can prepare him to face a James Keating in 1-on-1 basketball. Like I can do that, but I'm not going to make James any better by playing him 1-on-1 or competing with that. And maybe we can end it with that. I just think I think full circle. We're coming up on an hour and 10 minutes, so maybe we end it here. But like, just kind of encompassing what we said, like there's a whole bunch of different ways to go about anything, right? We have different parameters stopping us. We have different hurdles to be a successful franchise as a Colorado Rockies. Fans are not ignorant of that. I would say Colorado fans are pretty smart and aware of what's kind of going on around them, which I do appreciate. But like, I also just like to throw the other side out there. I think there is a different perspective, different way to look at things. But in the end, like, I don't know, does it really matter that we didn't trade Elias Diaz for a Dylan Spain 2.0?
Well, let me ask you this, put a pin in this one. If Elias Diaz working with Anthony Molina and the other pitchers on the pitching staff, which absolutely has value, and the Rockies have said exactly that. Catcher is that one spot where, hey, we could trade him, maybe get something. Yeah, but the improvement to those pitchers has an intangible thing that we'll never know about, and you can never even put a number on. So I 100% agree with you. But if keeping him around now costs Drew Romo to have his first cup of coffee to get his feet wet before what should be his first and proper rookie season, are you happy about that?
Drew Romo's clock would start. So my comeback would be Drew Romo's clock would start. Now he loses his rookie eligibility and he's on the clock for year 2 going in next year. He doesn't have the opportunity to earn you a draft pick for winning rookie of the year. Like
he wouldn't, but you're not calling him up for 140 at bats or 45 days of service time. I just mean in September.
If September, yeah. If again, I said earlier, if they don't DFA Elias Diaz, my tune is changing. Like if Diaz is still on this team in September, I'm not saying what I'm saying now, but not trading Diaz at July 30th, I don't think that's a big deal.
Yeah, I have one thing.
3 weeks of Elias Diaz.
Extra time with Anthony Molina and Hunter Goodman to turn them into a little bit better players.
I have one thing, and it was kind of a while ago now, but I think it's going to wrap everything up nicely. Patrick, I completely agree with you. Success only happens when you play into your window. And then Aaron, I completely agree with you when you said that 2025 has to be a year where you see what you have. Because the Rockies, we can argue all day about if they win or lost this trade deadline, whatever. They lose this trade deadline if you miss the 2026, 2027 window, which is pretty much, that's clearly cut out as our window, 2026, 2027. And that's when, you have to play into that window, as Patrick is saying. And that's where you have to make the most of a year like 2025 and these most recent years, like Aaron was saying.
One of the things that I find funny, and I think good, this is true of all teams, is the phrase of like, we got to see what we've got. And the really good teams out there, they kind of already know what they've got.
Yeah.
That's what allows them to get even better. Because if you've got 4 or 5 outfielders in AA, say, for example, you already know which are going to be the ones that you want to keep. And you know the ones that you want to sell because their stock is never going to be as high. It's only going to go down as they get, continually get overexposed because those guys. You've drafted them or you've developed them or you've signed them internationally. So I always find that interesting. See what you've got. Well, some teams know what they've got, and when you don't, that definitely is a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Push back to that. I just like pushing back. The Rockies don't really know what they have because they have that disadvantage of playing at altitude. Like Carson Palmquist at Hartford or Spokane might not be the same Carson Palmquist at Albuquerque or Colorado. And like, there's that whole thing, like things you have to be able to adjust to altitude and not altitude. So you go and crush AA as a hitter. How are you going to translate to this change, and how do you prepare for that? Like, how do the Rockies prepare for that whole thing? And like, I really do think the Rockies front office and development and all that kind of have the toughest job in Major League Baseball, because they have to take in that account, and they still can't figure it out. Like, go to the San Francisco series and we can just end it at that. But it's just like, I think there's just so many more factors. Like the Rockies, yeah, sure, we might see this guy in AA, but we do need to see what he can do at the Major League level, the AAA level, because it's not just the talent, but it's also the adjustments that you have to make on everything. Where the Yankees look at Anthony Volpe, yeah, you crushed AA. All right, we know what we have in you at the Major League level. Let's go with it. I think there's a little bit of that too. But let's end it with that. Let's do final thoughts going around. Justin, or Just Keating, James, your final thoughts on the Colorado Rockies in any aspect, however you want to take that.
Just have fun watching the young guys and picking out the individual players that we all can kind of latch onto, and don't get bogged down by the negative talk and the losing season. That's all I can say.
Yeah. And you guys really tabled a great discussion, and I'm glad that I was able to add in sometimes. But yeah, the end of this year is watchable and viewable because of the young guys that are playing. And so that's what Rockies fans have to look forward to. And I'm looking forward to finding out about the new Rockies Insider podcast that's coming.
Funny you mentioned that. So yeah, starting on Monday, at least 5 days a week, and probably 7 or 8 podcasts a week. We'll kind of split those things up. But yeah, we can have a YouTube channel, Rockies Insider. Some people are already engaging a lot on social media at Rockies_Insider on X and on Threads. And yeah, I'm really thankful for all the help Aaron and Lewis and the crew at Blake Street Banner have done, especially over at Just Baseball. They're doing it too. Jack and Ryan doing a great job to get Rockies Insider out, and looking forward to getting back talking Rockies baseball every single day from my sheet of baseball cards and my glowing purple orb behind me, and breaking down all kinds of topics. You know, what's the grade for the trade deadline? What are the storylines for the final 2 months of the season? I know it's going to be a lot of similar talk here on Blake Street Banner. I look forward to coming back. Is Michael Tolley going to hit 30 home runs? Is Brenton Doyle going 30 for 30? Like, there's plenty to talk about here when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. Some good, some bad, some historical, right? So here, listen to Blake Street Banner, listen to Rockies Insider. There's room for both of us.
Yeah, you can find enough time. Like, it's in there. So yeah, I'm excited for your new endeavor. Like, Rockies, we need all of it. We need all the coverage in any way possible, and let alone somebody that does it as fantastic as you do. So it's super excited for Rockies Insider to happen. Already on the Twitter, already on the thread. So go follow him. We're getting everything else set up. Yes, Wild the Innocent 2026 Rockies win the division. Heard it here first. Just win, baby. Brian, absolutely. Let's do it. As always, go Rocks. Woo! Thank you for watching and listening. Please check out our link tree for more content. 2, 1, and done.